Hello again, and greetings to all those who care and dare to listen. This is John Lash, the one who calls himself the Gnostic teacher, the one who is currently conducting the Charlotte working via this YouTube channel, Mandela Effect Decoded. Yeah, that's me, and it's January 13th. Quite a special day in my life. On the eve of an even more special day. And I'm here to talk to you about a matter of imperative importance to me. I hesitate even to use the word importance. It's a banal term and really doesn't reach the gravity of the issue. You know, it's as if you and I were stranded on a raft in the middle of the ocean, having survived a shipwreck, and we needed some fresh water to drink. And I turned to you and I said, hey, it's really important that we have some fresh water, you know. No, it's more than important. What I have to say today, I feel compelled to try to get through to you about something that I would call the central, urgent, and imperative concern of humanity in the world today. Now, if I were to put a label on that concern, I would name it the tragic impotence of the truth. Now, I think it's safe to assume that a lot of you who are listening to me right now, all of you in fact, are aware of a massive process that has been happening in the world, let's say since 2001, since 9/11. You've heard this process referred to as an awakening. Well, the word awakening can be interpreted in a couple of ways. First of all, it can be an awakening from something, such as an awakening from sleep, or from ignorance, or from a coma. But equally so, it can be an awakening to something. And I like to apply the latter term here. So I'm going to say something in this attempt to reach you on this special day that you already know, simply by way of confirming it and bringing us together in a heart-to-heart moment of realization. There has been, and there is ongoing, an awakening to the truth of what is happening in the social order on this planet. I emphasize the words in the social order. I'm not talking about what's happening in nature. I'm not talking about what's happening with the birds and the bees and the tigers and the elephants and the animals. I'm talking about what's happening uniquely in the human social world, the world of human animals. And this awakening to the truth has many facets. Since 9/11, largely due to the internet, uncountable numbers of individuals around the world, but especially in the English-speaking countries and in the white Caucasian nations, have awoken to the way that things work in the world. And this awakening has been a hard and brutal process, because if you have been part of this awakening, and I'm sure you have, or you wouldn't be listening to me, then you know that it involves the really, really painful realization that the human social order is run on deceit and fraud and a program of control extending even to a program of extermination. Well, I know that you all know this. I'm not going to take time to go over even a quick inventory of all that to which you have awoken, such as the nature of the Federal Reserve Bank, the nature of the JQ, who are the Zenosh, what is Jewish religion, what is the agenda of the Cabal Jews, what is the agenda of the corporations, what is the agenda of the media organizations, the media corporations such as Google, YouTube, and so forth. I'm not going to review all that. You know that already. The point that I feel compelled to make to you today addresses this fundamental question. Once you awaken to the truth about all that fraud, deception, and control with murderous intent, what do you do about it? What can you do about it? Now, there's a widespread assumption, which I do not hold, in the so-called truth community, I would call them the truth core, that merely exposing the truth will bring change into the world, change for the better. Merely exposing the perpetrators, and so many of them have been identified and named, haven't they? Merely exposing them, exposing their modus operandi, showing how they manipulate, how they deceive, peeling away the layers of deceit to reveal their ultimate agenda. Some of you may believe or wish that the exposure of the truth is itself enough to change the problem, to solve the problem, and change the world for the better. And I completely disagree. And I'm here to tell you today a really, really hard truth. And I know some of you may not accept it, but that's fine. I'm talking completely from my own limited and personal viewpoint. I ask you to consider the difference between motivation and means. I can assert with every cell of my body that the truth is the most powerful motivating force known to the human species. That being so, it naturally comes to all of us at a certain moment that seeing the truth about the way the world operates socially, talking about the social order, finances, the media, the legal system, education, government, coming to see the truth about how all that works confronts you with a massive system of lies and deceit. And yet you don't crumble, do you? You don't collapse. You don't just fall into rubble upon facing that massive system at the moment or through those many moments when you awake to the truth. No, you stand there. And why do you stand against those lies and deceit and the agenda of control, domination, and genocide? Why do you stand against it? Because innately you know that the power of the truth is supreme over the power of lies. If you didn't know that, you would collapse in absolute despair upon seeing the fucking magnitude of the deceit, fraud, and evil that is perpetrated every second of the day on this planet by a small faction of members of the human species, if they are indeed still human. And I assure you that some of them operating at the executive level of evil are not human. They are archontic or archontified replicas of human creatures. So I would have you bear in mind that exterminating them is not like exterminating a living creature. If you kill a cockroach or a mouse or a rat, you are still killing an animal. Those perpetrators at the executive level of evil, the Xenosh, are not animals anymore. And they have no feeling for any creature that exists in the animal kingdoms of cats, dogs, or human beings. But putting that issue aside for the moment, just let me return to the well-known fact of the immense magnitude and complexity of the web of deceit and evil to which you awaken when you awaken to the truth. Any of us would be totally crushed and driven into despair by that realization unless it were certain that the power of truth is greater than the power of all those lies. And that is a fact. But the tragedy of the impotence of truth is also a fact. And how do I reckon that? Well, I reckon it just as I said a moment ago, by the consideration of motivation compared to means. Those who operate on lies and deceit have their own motivation. Ultimately, that motivation is a master race genocide agenda, as I've explained on many occasions. And they also have the means to carry out that agenda. Those of us, you and I, who see the truth of what these enemies of life are doing and what they wish to do ultimately, for instance, in the 3 wars described in the Pike letter, well, what do we have? What do you and I have? We have the motivation of the truth, which is superior to the motivation of those lies. But you and I do not have the means to act on that motivation. That is the tragic impotence of the truth. So those psychopaths and enemies of life who are largely in charge of the social order today, I mean, let's face it, it's the truth, isn't it? It's the obvious truth. They control the financial system, fiat currency, fractional reserve banking, they control the media, they control the judicial system. They control the educational system, entertainment, you name it. Those evil perpetrators, life-hating, control freaks, have their own motivation, and you got to give it to them. Their motivation is pretty damn strong. Look at where it's gotten them. And they have the means to enact that motivation. The problem with the truth, you see, is that no matter how much you realize, if you don't have the means to enact the truth, then you are stalled, stranded in the impotence of the truth. Truth alone, knowing the truth alone, cannot change anything. It cannot. It will not. And if you think it will, then you are trapped in pretending. And the time for release from pretending has come. The time has come for a collective release from pretending. So I would argue, on the basis of my limited personal view of what's wrong with the world, that the process of awakening to the truth has gone as far as it needs to go. Those in the truth core who now dedicate their lives every day to seeing through the deceit and penetrating the mechanisms of fraud and control know all they need to know. You know all you need to know. No one can know everything about all the fraud and deceit because it's massive. But you know all you need to know. Time for awakening to the truth is over. The time has come now for release from pretending about what you think you can do to knowing the truth. And the tragic fact is, you can't do anything without the means. Motivation and means. Without the means to act on the truth, there's nothing that you can do. Now, I just want to briefly address a consideration or objection which certainly arises at this point in my little discourse here today, trying to reach you heart to heart. A good many of the people in what I call the truth core, it's been also called the truth movement, dedicated, serious individuals, many of them would give their lives to see the world take a better turn based on what they know. Many of these individuals are still pretending that there is going to be a legal solution for the perpetrators and enemies of life. For instance, since about October, November of last year, when, you may recall, I noted that the agency behind the Mandela effect would shift to another gear. Since that time, with these QAnon disclosures on 4chan and a lot of other chatter on the alternative media platforms, well, what do you hear? Oh, there are 10,000 indictments. Oh, certain well-known perpetrators, whom I won't bother to name, have been hauled off to Guantanamo Bay in chains and so forth and so on. It's total pretending. It's make-believe. It is never going to happen. The means that is required to act on the motivation that comes from knowing the truth cannot come from the system that operates on lies. There is no justice. There is no way in the judicial system to truly oppose and defeat the psychopaths and perpetrators. And if you still think that there is, then you are caught in pretending. Likewise, according to the current chatter on the internet, oh yeah, great news. There's a group of people in the deep state. There are those in the deep state who are going to undermine the deep state from within. There are those in the three-letter agencies who are working hard to bring down those agencies and to end the reign of terror and deception that has been running rampant on this planet for a good many years now, and especially since the assassination of JFK in 1963. Oh, happy day! There are brave and courageous men and women in those agencies who are subverting them from within, and they're going to save us. No, they're not. They're not going to save anybody. Talk about pretending. Talk about make-believe. This QAnon phenomenon is pretty much the biggest performance of make-believe that I've seen in a long time. And many, many people in the Truth Corps fall for this. Why? Due to the tragic impotence of the truth. As much as they know, there's nothing that they can do. Think of Monsanto. What do you know about Monsanto? How evil is that corporation? Well, all corporations are evil, in my opinion. All corporations are evil. But let's just take Monsanto. It's a cheap shot. It's an easy example, right? Hey, there's a CEO of Monsanto. There's a board of directors. There's a legal team. Where are they? Can you ever confront any of those individuals directly? Could you ever have the means to confront them, to oppose them, and to stop them from what they do? No, you don't have the means to do that. You might have the motivation, but you don't have the means. Those who operate on lies and deceit and a murderous agenda of control and enslavement, they have the means. The battle on earth is not fought on a level playing ground. Get it? Without the means, no matter how profoundly and passionately you're motivated by the truth, there's nothing you can do. Nothing. Suppose, for instance, that you are living in the suburbs or near the rich suburbs of some American city, or you're living in Vail, Colorado, or someplace like that where the rich live, as I used to live in Santa Fe. And you find out, oh yeah, the CEO of Monsanto lives right over there. That's his house, you know. He lives there with his family, he or she, you know. So what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? You're going to go knock on the door? Give him a talking to? Tell him to stop what he's doing? Tell him that you know the truth about all the evil things that Monsanto does, for the destruction of life itself, the destruction of the organic integrity of the planet for profit? What are you going to do? Stand on his doorstep and rant? Or are you going to, purchase a .357 Magnum and go blow his head off? What are you going to do? What do you have the means to do? You have no such means. Admit it. One of the most common and pernicious forms of pretending is the belief in saviors. So what you see today is the really laughable spectacle of those pathetic dupes who call themselves Christians that still believe that humanity is going to be saved by the Messiah in one way or another. It's no different from the belief that certain honorable and courageous men and women in the deep state are going to turn against their own bosses and authorities and bring down the deep state and save humanity from the machinations of those evil agencies. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. The belief, the faith, the reliance upon someone who saves us, unfortunately, comes along with the realization of the truth. Do you see that? Realization of the truth, the recognition of the truth about how things work, tends to induce this belief that someone is going to intervene and make it all different. Why? Again, I rest on my point. The tragic impotence of the truth itself causes many, many people to fall into that act of pretending. Time for the act of pretending is over. The time to realize that there is no Savior coming out of Christianity, and there is no Savior coming through 4chan and through the deep state. And there is no Savior at all. There is no one coming to save you. No one. If you put yourself among that group of people, as I do, who see the true plight of humanity today, then you have the responsibility to act in whatever way you can. But you cannot act to defeat the system of evil on the terms the system itself presents to you. There is no justice. Quote me on that. I really do. I would be so happy in the immediate and far future if people would say, hey, you know that guy John Lash, he was the one who came out and said, there is no justice. I don't just mean just. I don't merely mean that there is no justice in that judicial system which has been constructed by Junos who. I mean there is no justice flat out, period, at all in the world. There is no justice in the cosmic order. And whether you believe it or not, and whether you like me or not, I do know something about the cosmic order. But I'm talking here about the social order, and I assure you that there's no way that the legal system will deliver a defeat of the psychopaths and the enemies of life. It is a simple and brutal fact, my friends, that those who hold power never concede power. And they have rigged a system to protect their power. So if you attempt to use the legal system to take their power away from them, you cannot succeed. How could you possibly succeed with a legal system which has been so rigged that there is no longer any due process, that there is no longer any trial by jury required to arrest and persecute and convict someone? How can you expect to turn that system around and use it against those who rigged it in just that way? Stop pretending. Stop pretending. Likewise, for every single area that you may look for rescue or salvation, there is none. The only possible means of change is that which you find within yourself, within you and I as individual human animals. That's it. There is no change by working through the system. Democracy is one of the greatest deceits on this planet, along with the deceit of communism. They work really well together. There is no solution to social evil and the machinations of the control freaks and psychopaths whom you see and whom you can easily identify now thanks to the truth movement in all the areas of life: finance, government, education, media. There is no solution through the system. So what's going to happen? Well, one thing that's certainly going to happen is violence. And I would say, without predicting, just my gut feeling, that it's extremely likely that some people are going to hit the streets in violent protest against the system that enslaves them and threatens their lives and allows horrific things to happen every day in the name of human rights and democracy and other fraudulent scams run by the Xenosh. It's going to come to violence. It's coming to violence. My concern, and I've been talking about this for many years, is how to direct that violence toward the proper targets. Because the Xenosh and their Goyim accomplices know very well how to provocateur a situation, and they know how to divide and conquer, and they know how to direct violence away from themselves toward other parties. That is a truth that you vitally need to know to face the situation today. Those who hold power never concede it voluntarily. It has to be taken from them. The question is, how do those who are motivated by the truth manage to accomplish such an act? Well, here we come to the conclusion of my little message today. It's 32 minutes, and I'd like to top it off as quickly as I can. Tomorrow I'm performing a courting at a place called Charlotte's Ridge. This courting is an act of Gaian Tantric magic with the intention to kill. Not all Gaian Tantric magic has the intention to kill, but that option is included in the kit. Now, I'm doing something tomorrow which will certainly change my life forever, and the rest of my life will never be the same and can never be. Those of you who followed me so far will know that the Charlotte working is unlike any event, any proposal, any proposition or program or project that has ever been publicly proposed, ever in history. And there is no way to tell, no way to foresee the ultimate ramifications of this event. But I can tell you, I can only tell you my heartfelt conviction that those ramifications will be great and true and real, palpable and provable. I would not propose magic to the world if it were not something to be proven. I mean, where do you think I'm coming from, my friends, after all these years? Do you realize what kind of risk I'm taking by putting this proposal in your minds? Yeah, big fucking deal, right? The risk of ruining my reputation. Hey, look what happened. You know, he was getting on. There is something called, what is it? Oh, yeah, senile dementia. John Lash, he was a great teacher, did a lot of solid scholarly work in the area of Gnosticism, but at the end he really lost it. After making a huge case to the world about release from pretending, what does this guy do? Well, he comes out and proposes the most outrageous act of pretending of all. He proposes to use magic to oppose and defeat those perpetrators and enemies of life, which are so well known by now and so well identified by name and deed. And this is what I've done. This is what I've done. And why have I done it? I've done it as my response to the tragic impotence of the truth. I'm saying, how about giving it a try? There is a means to act upon those perpetrators without the advantage of having direct contact with them and overcoming them and taking their power from them by physical force, or merely, as I would prefer if I had the opportunity, putting a bullet in their heads. Believe me, I would, if I had the chance. And if you don't think that taking them out in that way would stop anything and would change their system, I have to tell you, you're really wrong about that. Sure, there are others to replace them, but if you think that it would be futile to exterminate the identified perpetrators, some of the identified perpetrators, merely because there are many more waiting to replace them, you would be seriously wrong. Why? You would not be taking into account what cowards they are. You see, they maintain their power through the illusion of power. Bear that in mind. The illusion of power carries also the illusion of impunity, of unreachability. Why do you think these presidents and other world leaders belong to secret societies such as the Masons or the Skull and Bones chapter of whatever it is a chapter of? Why do you think they belong to those organizations? Simply because those organizations give them the guarantee of impunity. They will never be punished for anything they do. They are outside the reach of law, and they are unreachable to those whom they harm and tyrannize. The fact is that you cannot reach them. And even if you could, it's very unlikely that you could do much damage to them, considering the systems of security they surround themselves with. You might, for instance, be able to take out a head lawyer of Monsanto, but you would be lucky if you got away alive. And even the best sniper in the world today would have difficulty pulling off an effective kill. Nevertheless, I repeat my assertion. Those who hold power for evil purposes never concede it. It must be taken from them by force. Do you have the means to do that? I say to you, yes, you do have the means. I offer you the means. You have the power, but you do not have the skill required to exercise the power that you have to oppose and defeat the enemies of life. And I'm telling you today, January 13th, that as of this day, that power becomes available to the world at large. Bear in mind, my friends, that the Charlotte working is not just one specific right directed toward one specific target. I know that some of you may have difficulty with that target, with the TI, the target identity. I know that some of you may struggle and not comprehend that particular choice of target, which, by the way, I did not choose. Nevertheless, I advise you to hold to the trust in this case. It takes a little trust to move on here, to trust that the target was well chosen. The target has been well chosen. And the first instance of proof of concept of Gaian Tantric magic is profoundly significant and derives from a non-human agency. So in closing, what if I summarize in this way? I'm talking to you heart to heart. I'm not pretending to be anything but another individual struggling with the terrible situation that faces the Rome, the human species. I'm telling you that I've practiced shamanism and Gaian Tantric magic intensively for the last 15 years of my life. I received the term of Gaia Awakening in August of 2008, and along with it, the tool of the Shakti cluster, about which I wish to instruct you in many ways, if that is to be possible in the immediate future. And I'm here finally to tell you my conclusion, my realization about changing the world for the better. It can only be done by non-ordinary means. Non-ordinary means are the only tools that you and I have available to overcome those who are so protected, those who do indeed operate with impunity, who are unreachable. It requires non-ordinary methods of warfare to defeat them. And so I present myself as the exemplar and teacher of that warfare, beginning with the Charlotte working. I want you to know that the Charlotte working is only the beginning. Oh yes, you must know it's only the beginning of a great adventure. It is first and foremost an open threat display against the enemies of life. Secondly, it is an actual tantric ritual intended to kill. And third, it is the overture to a great adventure in empowerment and in delight, in the delight of claiming your true endowment as a magical child of the wisdom goddess. So I leave you with that thought, and I leave you also with the commitment that I make by undertaking the Charlotte working. For those who care and dare to learn, it's an opportunity to enter into the practice of Gaian Tantric magic. When I talk about magic, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's not make-believe. It's not just another act of pretending due to the desperation of wanting to be saved. which itself arises from the desperation of the impotence of the truth. So magic is the means. And why not try it out? There's really nothing to lose. And from this moment on, from tomorrow on, I can assure you that whatever the success of the Charlotte working in its specific intention, you can brace yourself for a breakthrough into power such as you have never known. Truly, this is the moment of the Rome to claim their power. And that ultimately is the purpose of the Charlotte working. So thank you for your patience. I know it's not easy to listen to me. Most of the time, those who click on these talks do not listen to them all the way through. But those of you who do know who you are. There are what? Perhaps 40 or 50 of you. Quantity doesn't matter. But the intensity of your love and of the hate with which you protect that love, that matters. That matters to me. I need that. And I count on that from you from this moment on.